Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Traumaplicity podcast. Traumaplicity is all about the word trauma, which can be one event or it could be ongoing negative experiences and events that impact you psychologically, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And the simplicity is that when we allow our brain to be simple, we actually can heal our traumas, hence the word traumaplicity. And during this show, we want you to we want you to feel heard, seen, valued, and that you're loved and worthy at all times. With that said, we have series number 3, and this is all about beliefs. I am so excited to have one of my previous clients and one of my group coaching, as well as a mentor, and I consider her a colleague, on with me today, and that's Dr. Crystal Westfield. And so Dr. Crystal Westfield is an active follower of Christ, a wife, and a mother of 2 children. Crystal's early experiences of grief and loss led her to pursue a career in helping others in ministry and in the community. Dr. Crystal has worked over a decade helping foster youth and families as a licensed therapist. She has later earned her doctorate of psychology degree, which led her to her current work as a life and leadership coach, consultant, and trainer. So, Dr. Crystal, it's so good to have you on here today.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Yeah. So I want to just open up. Where were you before you began working with me? And that was probably a while ago, and specifically with group coaching.
So I was already kind of through a personal journey. I had already started a personal journey many years before that. Just working on myself, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, kind of all things. And then professionally, I had branched out from doing private practice, kind of brick and mortar, into more like online coaching and consulting and training. And so when you opened up the group coaching, that was really professionally was really kind of what caught my eyes and my ears to, wanting to kind of push further, needing a coach because coaches need coaches, just
Mm-hmm.
like therapists need therapists. And so I wanted to kind of just move through that, professionally. In my mind is where I wanted to go with that. I soon found out that there was a lot more personally that it helped me with as well.
That's so great. So what were some specific sessions that impacted your brain and thinking?
So I joined for specifically for internal value, and that was mainly for my professional life, and just in I wasn't charging my worth.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't for fair market value of my experience and, all the work and energy and the results that I had with clients. I just wasn't, um, I guess, valuing myself and my time. And so I joined for that. And so that did impact me. Surprisingly, though, um, what, well, okay, I can't just pick one. Now I'm thinking I can't just pick one or two or three. I could say that they all interlink together. And so
Mm-hmm.
because they all interlink together, I'll tell you the most impactful. So value, of course, professionally, but on a personal level, to my surprise, internal joy was really what kind of pushed me through my breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, with love and integrity and the value and safety and all of that, they all kind of, were interwoven into just kind of joy was kind of like towards the end. And
Mm-hmm.
so it just kind of all came together. But what I realized during that time was that I really did lack like fullness of joy.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even realize it. And it was had to do a lot with the grief and loss issues that I had been working on, but it just like came to a head, and I just had kind of a lot of revelation about the joy that I wasn't experiencing, that and that I was missing, really.
Mm-hmm. So the joy one was a surprising one that really moved you forward.
Yeah.
Okay. What techniques do you still use from the group coaching or things that we went through?
So mainly, because there were a lot of techniques that I had been using, but that were just kind of taken to a new level for me, which is where the coaches need coaches come in. But one that was specific to the coaching with you was the release and then receive. So I've
Mhm.
done release before. So I'm releasing, like, okay, I'm holding on to something that is not healthy for me, that is not working for me. So let's use grief, for example, a grief or something that I've lost. So aside from needing to reframe the idea of losing something, like I've experienced many losses of family members, as well as just in my life, different things that threatened my security and safety, or feeling, I should say, feelings of security and safety, right? But being able to not only reframe that, but then release that to the Lord. But then when you release that, sometimes it's like, okay, there's a big hole. Like, now what? There's a big hole. And then it's like, okay, Lord, what do you want me to receive? And that was very impactful for me.
Mm.
And that's something that I continued to use throughout, even now, when I need to. And in fact, um, shortly, it was shortly after that there was an anniversary of a friend that I had lost when I was very young, and it was the first major loss when I was 12. And
Mhm.
anniversaries of birthdays and, passing of death and all that were very difficult, continued. I mean, even in my 40s here, it was still difficult for me. And my mind was kind of locked up in that 12-year old girl. And so I noticed, though, that the work that I had done through the coaching, and I know it wasn't just the internal joy, but it was, just kind of the process through that, I was able to get through that anniversary, and I didn't feel anxious, and I didn't have heart palpitations, and I didn't have difficulty sleeping. And I just really experienced the joy of it. Instead
Mhm.
of focusing so much on the grief, or instead of my body,
Mhm.
my cells in my body just saying like, "Oh, there's a problem, there's something that happened." It was like, "No, like, this is okay. This is a great memory. These are things that I can remember. Yep, it came and it went and everything was great." Then it went to the next month, and then it happened with another one. And then I lost someone close to me,
Mhm.
and I did fine. And not fine as in I stuffed it away, which is what I got really good at doing, that I stuffed it away and I just was like, "Okay, well, I'll deal with that later." No, like, I really was well with it. I really was able to process it. I really was able to find the joy and the peace in it without emphasizing the loss, without
Mm.
emphasizing the grief. Sure, I went through, "Oh, man, well, that's tough," well, that's, missing and feeling all those things. But I was able to process through it a lot quicker and not having to, be stuck. And then another one happened, and then another anniversary happened. And
Mm.
so there's been, I don't know, 4 or 5 probably since then, and I'm like, "Okay, Crystal, like, you're through this," which was huge for me because I had many clients that I helped through the processes, but me, for myself, I wasn't there. And so
Mhm.
I helped them through the grief and the loss, and I helped them through the process, and, emphasize not to hang on to that. But in turn, I had many years where I just, it was just stuck. It was so stuck. So then once I was able to release that, and I'm like, okay, we've been through 4 and 5 of this. So, all right, I feel like that's a huge breakthrough.
That's huge. I love that. I love that you have been processing so much, but you saw a complete shift in that usual anniversary, right? Like when that happened, and
Mhm.
your body wasn't any longer keeping score, right? Bessel van der Kolk always says that. And you felt it, the grief release down through your cells, down through your being, which I think is incredible.
Yes.
And so you can still mourn the loss, right? But in a different way. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
powerful. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So thinking about how coaching has changed you, you're moving forward with your goals, thinking, vision, relationships, and you shared partially or a lot, of examples. Is there anything else you can think of that really helps you, that this has helped you move forward in different ways than maybe expected, or perhaps even with what you wanted through this program?
Um, well, one big thing was that I realized that security and the need to feel secure was because I viewed the loss of security as something that was missing for me. And by that, I mean that I would do everything I could to control, to feel secure, because security, feeling secure and security was equal to loss. And so that was something, just trust and trusting in God, that was really emphasized in our coaching sessions in our group. And I identified like, wow, okay, so because I identified these things as loss too. So if something major, it could be financial things, or it could be a major move, or things that happen in your life, having babies, getting married, and things. So then you're gaining something, but you're losing something. And again, that was kind of recorded in my mind and just recorded down deep that, like, wow, I lost. So instead of working through that, I realized there was a block there that I didn't process through, that I can be this and this. So
Mm,
I can grow, and I can also process the loss. So there can be something good, but I can also process, something that was lost, and not have to see that as a um, rock to my security.
mm,
And so I can feel secure in God and knowing, and I didn't even realize that about myself, because
yeah,
surely if I had,
sure.
anyone else, I would tell a client, I would tell like, oh, well, okay, let's look at this. But there was a block. And you talked a lot about the boulders, and there was that just in the way,
Yeah.
and so I think that also impacted my ability to really feel complete joy.
Hmm. That's
And
powerful.
so there was that block. So I wasn't able to feel complete joy, because although I'm like, oh, this is great, this is amazing, at the same time, I didn't process and allow myself to say, oh, but that's gone now. And
Hmm.
instead of seeing it as something that was taken away from me, seeing that as something that's just part of the process.
Mm. Yeah, and I love that you shared about security in a way where you can still feel secure, right? You can still be growing, but also there's part, right? Like you can still have growth, but then also feel
Mhm.
it, right? And also be able to grieve it. And it's okay to have both. It's okay to feel both, which I don't think everybody is always okay with. But I think the more than when you heal, you
Mhm.
realize that and I think that obviously like a lot of us were, faith-based or believers, but it's like, when you even think about Jesus, he mourned with those he mourned, and yet he had joy
Yes.
and fullness of life at all times. And I think that speaks to that because he mourned, even though he was going to raise
Yeah.
Lazarus from the dead, because
Mhm.
he could empathize, right? Like he can know where people were in their process,
Mhm.
uh, and yet still have joy afterwards. So I love that you brought that up because that's what came up to me in mind, when you were sharing that there's that as we heal, we can hold space for both. Yeah, that's
Yes, and
beautiful.
it's not a this or that. It's can
Yeah.
be a this and that. We don't always have this feeling or that feeling, or this emotion or that emotion. It's remembering that we can hold space for both at the same time, in order for us to heal, and in order for us to be able to have both hands open for what's new. And I think that a lot of times, for me, I forget that. I
Yeah.
might focus on just one over the other. And so if you focus on growth, but you're not focusing on like, okay, what did it take to get here? So for example, just a pretty basic example, we just moved from one state to another. Yes, we wanted to. Yes, we felt called to. So 9 months ago we moved, but we also felt the loss of leaving family and friends. And, we really liked that house and, all of that. But it was new and exciting. And so if we were just to be like, oh, that doesn't matter what we left, then we would be stuffing those feelings. And eventually it's going to come out in some way. And if you don't process it,
Yeah.
then it would come out in my physical body or something. So understanding that we can be excited about that, about moving, but also make space to work through like, yes, but it also means we're losing something that we love too. And
Yeah.
so moving from one state to another is a major thing, but it's just, just a basic example of how, we can feel both happy and excited and also mourn kind of a loss of what we've known.
Yeah, that's a great example, of the both and being able to hold space for both, even in your example of moving. Yeah.
Mhm.
So thinking about, how would you share with women and men who are listening about coaching and how it will help them to use their voice or even feel more confident or moving forward? And again, I always preface this with, I'm a big believer, even as a coach, and you may know this, that, there's a lot of coaches out there. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be 100% everybody's fit. They're not everybody's a fit for me. And I
Right.
take that very seriously because I want to work with people, right? I want to work with everybody, but I know I'm not for everybody, right? Everybody's in a
Mhm.
different place. And I also know I'm not a fit for everybody based on many factors. But if you were, sharing based on your journey, what are some important things to think about as a coach, or perhaps why you even chose to journey with me?
Well, one is that I had the privilege of just getting to know you a little bit and seeing your transparency. That was definitely important. You didn't, you did not pretend to have arrived anywhere or, to not be in need of continuing to grow yourself. So that was for me, that was important, especially because I also coach and I know the importance of that. The alignment with the Holy Spirit was huge for me, because when you're guided by the Holy Spirit, then things can change. So you can have your topics and say, okay, we're going to talk about, internal joy or internal value or something. But then depending on the individual, or in my case, the group,
Mm,
from one group to another, I think you had more than one group at the time. From
mm,
one group to another, it's gonna shift and change. And so because needs can be slightly different, even though the topic's the same. And so in
mm,
order to help um, someone release that, in order to speak to that, then there has to be that element of Holy Spirit alignment and to
mhm,
have that discernment. So that was huge for me. And so that had me definitely come back for round two, which, by the way, is where my breakthrough came in. Not round one, it was round two.
yeah.
Is where the breakthrough came after. Um, and so we can't put timelines on it either. And so
Sure.
those were huge because their transparency, your authenticity, and then the alignment with the Holy Spirit, which I think is not only invaluable, but also completely necessary for this type of work.
Mm. Thank you. I appreciate that. And also, just because when you were saying about round two, and that's exactly it, right? Sometimes we have breakthrough in different times, but really that round one, because we had done this, right? And we said yes to this journey. And I was like, okay, we're doing it again. And it completely was different. The first part, hi there, the first part of that journey, he was coming to join us on the show.
Yeah.
The first part of it was really like the brain, I think of it as like unlocking your brain. And I feel like that second part, we went so deep to unleash,
Yeah.
deep stuff out of us to really get aligned. Like I just felt like God was, and I even got healed of my thyroid during that. So there was a deep healing, of all of us in different ways from that first round was really just
Mhm.
cracking open, these different places. Because I was surprised. I was like, oh, we're going to do this again. And it changed, the whole content was different
Yeah.
that second round because we were going deeper. God was bringing us deeper. So yeah, I'm glad that you had that breakthrough because I feel like there were different ones for different purposes with each. So I love that you brought that up. So
And
just thinking, oh, go ahead.
oh, I
Go
was
ahead.
just gonna say one more thing is that I think that I because of my experience, my professional experience and personal experience, and that I was already on the journey, I think after that first round, I would still have a breakthrough. However, not in the same way and not in that amount of time. I think it would have maybe taken me double or triple probably to kind of get through that because it forced me,
Hmm.
every session, it forced me to dig deeper. And I didn't have any, I mean, I could have made excuses, but that's not why I was there. But when you're just with yourself and you don't have that accountability and you don't have that support, then it takes a lot longer. So although I could have, I'm sure, God can do things in many different ways. I think it would have taken me a lot longer and it would have been a lot more difficult road, kind of like how it was prior to that. So I think the second round definitely was, you know, even though I had a lot of tools, I think it was definitely necessary.
No, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. So,
Mhm.
before, as we're coming to the conclusion, I want the audience to learn a little bit about you and perhaps how they can get in touch with you. So, any new things happening in your life or upcoming events or things that you'd like to share about you or your work that, perhaps people can reach out to you.
Yeah. So, well, currently I'm working on a book. It's on healing,
Mhm.
and it's kind of about my healing process, but also a professional side of it. So it's also to help and give tools to others, um, and it's kind of a whole, complete mind, body, soul healing
Mm,
journey. So I'm working on that, and then I have working with a couple other speakers. It's a women's conference, Glow Stick. So the premise is
okay.
the broken before you shine or broken before you glow. And that's coming up the end of um, May
Mm,
and May that weekend. It's a virtual conference. And then I'll have more information on my Instagram and my website. So
okay.
it's just Crystal Westfield on Instagram and then Crystal Westfield.com.
Okay. Great. Well, I'll have to double check that you gave me that, and if not, we'll connect and get that, and I'll put that on the YouTube channel and on this podcast. So those of you listening, I'll have that information for you. So if you want to check in with Crystal and follow her and see when that is all happening. I love the conference. I love the women's conference coming up. Glow Stick, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love
Yes,
that.
glow stick.
So
Mhm.
that'll be great. So those of you tuning in, hopefully you enjoyed listening to Dr. Crystal Westfield. So Crystal, any final words of encouragement that you want to share with the audience?
Um, yes, I would say that just a reminder that healing is a process and that it's important to have grace on yourself through the healing, but also important to get help and not to be isolated through it because it's very difficult. The healing is very difficult when we're trying to do it on our own. And it's, we weren't meant to do things on our own. We were meant to be interdependent, not independent, and not just dependent, but interdependent with each other.
Mhm.
And so allowing the process, giving grace to yourself, and remembering that um, it's just because you're you may feel broken doesn't mean that you are, and to just trust the process, and most importantly, to trust God to give you the wisdom and discernment that you need.
Mm, thank you. I love that. And there is a journey, we always want to be at the end of the destination, but often the Gold is in the journey. And yeah, there are quick things that happen. But I do think acceleration, you sort of mentioned that, is in the people that you go with to get the help you need. Yes, there are times we do things on our own, but I will say, especially, in my healing journey, there's been like decades that I've done healing, but in the last 7 years, especially the last 3 years, I've had accelerations in my healing because I went to the coaches and mentors. I continue to go to the people
Mhm.
that I know are going to help me. So instead of me spending 10 or
Mhm.
15 years, right, 5 years, and
Yes.
then still having to get all these other bills because I'm doing all these other things when I could just get it done. When I say yes to that personal development, in the long run, it has helped. So I love that you shared that because
Mhm.
sometimes we're like, oh no, but it's like, how much are you going to spend later, if you don't jump in now, to your healing and or to your coaching or to your preferred personal development. And I think that's an investment for all of us, right? Personal development people are people that personally develop in themselves, and as you said, Crystal, whether we're licensed therapists or counselors or coaches, we all
Mm.
do. We're human. We all need accountability, not just with ourselves, but with other people. And I love that interdependence. So if you're tuning in, I'd love to hear what you have to say for this episode with Dr. Crystal Westfield. Everybody that joined, know that you're valued, loved, and worthy at all times in your process. You're always loved. And if you really, this touched you, please leave your questions, let your comments. Know that this Traumaplicity podcast, it is shown every week on Wednesdays on YouTube, Traumaplicity podcast, on the Amanda Hellman author and speaker Facebook page, and then also on the audio that's coming out, and that'll be during the week. So certainly you can tune in just on audio on your drive to work or home or wherever you're going, or you can tune in to watch the videos. Again, thank you, Dr. Crystal, for a great talk, and I hope everybody has a great week. Take care, everyone.